Alright, good morning again everyone. Welcome back to the KSR YouTube channel. It's another sunny day in Georgia. No, we're in Georgia, but it's not sunny. We're supposed to be going to drive this today. Yeah, we're working on wrapping up the brake system. But how can we test the brakes if it's raining? And it's kind of chilly too. See, I got my KSR hoodie on. Available at winwithksr.com if you need any merch. Gotta slide that in there. But yeah, Mike and I are gonna try and wrap up this thing today and get it aligned. Now that we chopped on the upper control arm mounts. Is it as good as it could be? No. Is it good enough for death metal charger? We think so. We'll find out soon enough. We ended up lowering these mounts. Ended up being right at an inch and a half, as well as relocated them back just a little bit. Well, interestingly enough, when Joe Barry built this car, one of the upper mounts he moved outwards on the driver's side so that it had lots of positive camber, and on the passenger side he actually moved them inwards. So I think we have made all of that better, but now we're going to jump into building some brakes. We thought yesterday we had some incompatibility issues, but turns out we just have to do some grinding. All right, well, the plan is to take off what we put on yesterday because we got a little grinding to do on the spindles, right?
Yep. So we're taking everything back apart again because we are running kind of a weird setup here. This kit is designed for modern people with bigger brakes and bigger wheels, at least 17-inch wheels. And we're running 15-inch wheels with a bunch of back spacing, which means we're running 11-inch brakes. Well, an 11-inch brake rotor doesn't work very well with a drop spindle, which is what we have. It actually contacts right here. So if you're going to be like us and run little wheels and little brake rotors and a drop spindle, you've got to grind this part of the steering arm right here. So we're going to do that and then put it all back together.
Then once we get it all together, you can see we've got a wheel adapter that got 8 lugs for the wheels. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bolts that hold the adapter together, and then 5 bolts on the backside. Yeah, that's a lot of bolts that hold the wheel on. A lot. But yeah, hopefully we'll have this thing on the ground here before too much longer. Take things apart, do a little bit of grinding, and then put it all back together, do an alignment, and then probably go get wet driving it. We'll see. All right, well, while you're here on the channel, please give us a subscribe, a like, and a comment, and that helps us grow the channel, which we've been really knocking it out of the park lately with new subscribers, so welcome to all of you guys. If you think you're a subscriber, you may want to check your subscription because YouTube has unsubscribed a few people lately. Not sure what the heck's going on with that, but happened to a good buddy of mine, so since he mentioned it, I figure I would mention it to all of you guys. So let's get back into working on this thing and let you know what we're doing. All right, so we are jumping back into this thing and taking it all apart. I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but we actually had to take the hub all the way back down because Mike had ordered 2 different wheel spacers to move the wheels back out to where they originally were, a 1-inch and a 2-inch wheel spacer. The 2 spacers had different bolt patterns where they attached to the car. Now, luckily, our wheel hubs had both bolt patterns in them, but unfortunately, we had to take the hub assembly all the way back down, which not a huge deal, but kind of how this stuff goes. And you'll notice that I was kind of using the little mini impact there to just snug all the bolts up, and then using the tire to hold that hub assembly so that I could torque everything and make sure I get it torqued to spec like the instructions suggest. Just something that I prefer to do when I'm building things is to, torque things to the manufacturer's recommendations. So why not use their expertise and time to make sure things are as tight as they need to be. I do usually put a little bit of Loctite on all the bolts that we install, especially with braking components, just because we don't like that stuff coming loose. Sometimes on caliper mounting bolts, I will use a Nordlock washer, which if you haven't ever heard of those, it's actually a 2-washer combined assembly that has little wedges on the mating sides of the 2 washers. And basically, once you get them tight, those washers have to spread apart before they can loosen, which is going to actually make the bolt feel tighter before it comes loose, so it works out really good. I've had great luck with them. We use them on all of the drag car builds that we do, and it makes it to where you can still service the calipers without having to, get the Loctite out. Because sometimes when you do use Loctite, like that stuff's really not coming apart, which is good, but also sometimes you need to be able to take stuff apart. And with the Norlock washers, once you overcome the wedge, then they come loose like it didn't have any kind of locking mechanism on it at all. So it's kind of nice there to do all that. You can see now I'm kind of going through and actually setting the caliper spacing, because with the aftermarket brake kits, they typically, you can shim the caliper in and out to get it centered perfectly on the rotor. So we go through and do all that, both sides, get that all worked out. Now I'm bolting the wheel adapters back on, which, it's a little bit tedious with all of the bolts and stuff that holds this thing together. But it is what we needed to adapt to the 8-lug wheels that the Death Metal Charger has. And it also spaced the wheels out to get them, more flush with the fender, which if we did not have these 2-inch adapters, it would have looked really silly with the front tires tucked way in. It just worked out to where the 2-inch spacer was what we needed to match the look of the old wide suspension that Joe Barry had built for the car. So that worked out really good. Now we're bolting the tires back on, getting ready to put the thing back on the ground so that I can do an alignment. And then once we take care of that, we actually take some of this stuff back apart, like the wheel spacers, and go back and put a small amount of Loctite on all of the studs and the bolts to make sure that everything stays tight. All right, well, you guys saw in the time lapse me putting my side on. Well, while that was happening, Mike was working on this side. We've got wheels and tires on.
I know, and they're the ones I wanted too, which makes me really happy.
I think we're ready to put this thing on the ground. That's kind of exciting. You can see just how much adjusting we've got to do on the coilovers to get the ride height. And Mike's after. That's kind of a big moment.
So psyched about this.
Woohoo! Let's see what the old bump steer does once it hits the ground. You ready?
Let's see. Moment of truth.
Here goes nothing, or something.
Let's do it. Oh, I'm excited.
Try not to just slam her down on the ground.
You got negative camber or full view?
Oh, that bump steer is good.
Ooh. There's no preload on those coilovers, and it's actually sitting pretty good. Which means it's going to settle, so we preload it.
That's not bad.
Good.
Although it does have a little rake right there.
It does. And I like a little bit of rake. But I also don't like a ton of fender gap in the back. Yeah. I will personally give up a little bit of rake to have the back look cooler. Yeah, tuck the tire. Yeah. I also personally lower the front some more. Give it a little more.
Yeah, if we just take, I had preloaded the fronts. I mean, it's probably only going to change the front maybe 1/4 of an inch.
And it's still got to settle. Yeah.
Yeah, it probably won't settle much with it being all coilover, assuming it's a good spring on it. It should be a long time before it sees it settling. It's back on the ground again.
Yeah, I'm so excited about this.
Got plenty of gas in it?
Oh, yeah. Let's go eat lunch. Buy some brake lines. Lower the back, leave the brakes, and then go whoop on it.
That sounds great. Heck yeah. Here's the back away shot for my camera. I think we're gonna lower the rear one hole to try and get it a little bit more level and low. Go grab some lunch, go grab some front brake lines. And hopefully by the time we get done with that, the rain stops. We can go for a ride.
It would be awesome if the rain stopped, but if it still rains, whatever. It's got a windshield and a roof. We'll be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not Leroy, so. Sweet. Be back in just a second. All right, well, we are back from lunch and from going by RK Racecraft to get ourselves some brake lines. Had some shorter ones in stock that'll work out a lot better than the really long ones that Mike had laying around. But I've got the front end back up so that I can actually take some camber out of the front. It ended up being 2.8 degrees. Great for a road race car, but not so great for something that's going to drive on the street. So I'm going to try and get that back to probably 1.5. 1.5 I think would be a good number, since this thing isn't going to be driven a lot, but it is going to be driven, you know, in the dirt sometimes. Who knows where else? But 1.5 should be still a little bit on the aggressive side for a street car, but not for something that's going to be on the dirt. Like if it was only going to be playing in the dirt, I'd probably run it probably 2.5, like maybe even about where it's at 3. It'd be worth a shot to go try that. But we're going to shorten the lower control arm to bring that in, and that will give us, by shortening that, that will also give us more thread engagement at the outer tie rod end, because you can see it's hanging out a little bit right there. Not terrible, but by the time we bring that in, I think we'll be in better shape there. Then putting some brakes on this thing, or brake lines, bleeding the brakes, hooking all the turbocharged piping back up, and taking this thing for a spin. The rain has slowed down and almost stopped. We probably have about an hour, I'm hoping, about an hour in putting things back together and doing alignment and getting everything worked out there. Then we're going for a spin. All right, like I said, we're going to take the lower control arms loose from the chassis and shorten those up. But also, while I'm doing that, Mike is installing the charge piping as well as the intake pipe that draws from the interior of the car. And I've had a couple other cars that have done that. Like, actually, there were mud trucks where you bring the intake pipe around into the interior of the truck. And I had forgotten how loud it makes the intake noise on the inside of the car. A little bit of a different feel when I was driving the car, which you'll get to see here in just a couple of minutes. But yeah, we got all that taken care of. The charge piping, got it realigned and reassembled, which it had been apart for a little while. So we had originally hoped to change the radiator in the car because Mike knew that it was a little bit on the small side. But we were running out of time, and I needed to get back to Florida because I have to pick up my kids from school the next day. So we decided to go ahead and take it out for a drive just to make sure that the car tracks straight, brakes straight, the steering feels normal, the steering doesn't bind up, and that basically the car doesn't try to put you off into the trees randomly, kind of like it used to before. So we're hoping, and you'll see shortly, we are hoping for a short but successful test drive, and then Mike will put a larger radiator with dual fans on it in another episode on his channel. And then you might just see us together again to go do some driving with this thing really on the limit. All right, so you guys have seen me do alignments before. Well, it's time for Death Metal Charger to get an alignment. Got the old smart strings out. Gonna do some leveling here, see if we can get our toe set. I've already got camber matched at about 1.5 degrees. It's about 1.4, 1.5 on both sides. Caster's laid back right at 5 degrees at right height. So yeah, we are very close to driving this thing. We got the front brakes bled. Willwood was supposed to be sending a master cylinder, but it didn't get here today, so we're gonna drive it with the old busted up original to whatever the master cylinder that is. So we'll figure that out at some point, but the brakes probably won't be as good as they can be once Mike upgrades the master cylinder. Because yeah, when you go from drum brakes to disc brakes, you definitely have to change your master cylinder. But it's got a little bit of a pedal, so we're gonna try it, see what happens. But right now I'm gonna get back to aligning it. And then the next thing we will be doing is pulling this thing out to go drive. So you guys don't need to see me align it. You know how I do all that. If you don't, go find another video on the channel where we have aligned it, or watch Mike's video about this where he explains it, or go watch the video on Mike's channel where I explained it a little bit better in more detail. So I'm gonna get to work. We're gonna go drive it in just a minute. All right, well, the time has come. I'm gonna go drive this thing to the gas station. Let's see. Well, we got a little. Okay, there we go. We made fuel pressure. Fuel pressure low. Well, duh, it's not on. You ready? Let's
Oh yeah, it doesn't idle cold. No IAC thing.
yeah, they're a little picky with no IAC in them. I'll hold it. I gotta swap batteries in the camera.
Ready when you are.
Here goes nothing. Oh, wah, wah. Well, stops and steers. Brakes aren't terrible. Like it's a long pedal, but it's nice and progressive. Like, all right, time for a little more driving. a successful test drive. Mike's pulling it back in the shop. I'm crimping some hoses for another project. But the death metal has returned. Got lots of room on this side. Yep. So what'd you think? Big long drive.
Even without the power steering, it steers better than it did before.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, before it was all clunky and it was even stiffer. That wasn't bad.
Nice.
That wasn't bad at all.
Actually, I'm getting power steering on it, and
Oh my god.
it's really good.
Steer it with 2 fingers.
Heck yeah. All right, everybody. Well, I can't remember if I did an outro or not, but yeah, there's, you know, I'm from a small town, and I don't get to see all these big city lights very much, but it's kind of cool. Something cool about driving through a big city at night on a clear night, seeing all of the buildings lit up. But appreciate everybody watching and subscribing. We'll see you guys next time.